All right, I'll give you a few more seconds to finish up. If we have not met before, my name is Jason. I'm so incredibly grateful to be up here on this stage. Today, we're going to spend a couple of minutes diving into some ideas, some principles that I want to tell you have changed the way that I think about my marriage, changed the way that I think about my parenting, changed the way that I think about leadership and my work. And I hope that these principles can do the same for you too. Now, before we get into that, I want to know, did anybody have like a fun answer to that last question? You don't have to say it, but just like if you chose something like, I want to be the best at a certain video game, the best at a certain sport, the best at baking. Anybody like that? Like they're like, this is my fun idea. Yeah, I see some hands. Did anybody have a more serious answer? You're like, I want to be the best owner of a company, the best manager, the best leader, the best spouse. Anybody have a like serious answer? A few of us? Yeah. Well, I want to tell you, like, I want to be the sort of person who's, like, chill, and I can get up on the stage and be like, yeah, I have a chill answer for that question. It's smoking brisket, like, to be the best ever. That would be amazing. Or the best ever at disc golf. That would be so much fun. But the truth is that my answer to that question is a little bit different. You know, I have actually been fascinated for essentially my whole life with people who can build and lead and spearhead organizations or movements that change the way that people think about the world. And not all of these people are people that you've heard of, but some of them are. Not all of these organizations and movements you've heard of, but some of them are. And I want to give you a little example of somebody who I'm just fascinated by. And his name, some of you may have heard it, but I think it's not very many of us, is Travis Kalanick. Travis Kalanick, this is him up on the screen behind me. In 2009, I almost said 2019, no, 2009, started a company in Southern California. And that company was started on an idea and with absolute blind faith in their ability to succeed at making this idea a reality. And so he went out and he got investment, and that investment grew quickly. And he went out and he started hiring people, and more people joined. And this company started growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And here's what happened. Like, companies grow, and usually, like, we might not hear about it unless you're in that industry or unless you're connected with that company. Some companies, when they grow so fast and in such ways that they start disrupting entire industries. And this was one of those where a whole industry started to look over and say, oh, this is big. And when I say the name of this company, I think most of us will know it. In fact, I think all of us will know it. I think most of us have their app on our phone right now. And from 2009 to now, this company has gone to be worth $150 billion. They have nearly 1 billion downloads across all app stores, and they have changed the way that you and I think about transportation forever. And that company is Uber. Now, I am fascinated by people like Travis who can spearhead an idea and change the way that basically our whole world, or at least our whole country, thinks about transportation. My experience traveling, and even sometimes traveling locally, is never the same. It was never the same after I started using Uber. It changes the way you think about technology, whether you like it or not, whether you're an Uber person or a Lyft person. Maybe you're still into finding a taxi. It changed the way we think about our world. Well, we asked you earlier if there was one thing that you could be the greatest at. You could just snap your fingers, ask a genie, and boom, you were the greatest in the world at. What would it be? And some of you gave fun answers. Some of you gave more serious answers. I think that when we dive down into it, you'll find that this simple truth is true. Every single one of us has an area in our life we want to be great at. For some of us, we've got several areas that we want to be great at. For some of us, it's just one, and we might not use those words, but I bet if we sat down and we looked at a list, you'd say, oh, maybe this idea of greatness goes beyond what I thought. So some of us, we might think, I want to be a great organizational leader. I want to be a great boss. I want to be a great owner. Some of us are like, I just want to be the greatest mom for my kids. I just want to be an incredible spouse. I just want to be an awesome member of our community. I want to be the greatest member of the city of Duval or the Snoqualmie Valley that's out here. But I think regardless of what you would pick on that list, every single one of us has something maybe more than one thing that we want to be great at. And so, how do we get there? Well, I sit back and I think, well, there are millions and maybe billions of books, podcasts, blogs, just pieces of media talking about how you can emulate some leader, how you can become the next Steve Jobs, how you can chase his level of innovation, or you can learn from Marie Kondo and her organization, or you can be like at least learning from, admiring from far away, the NFL's GOAT, Tom Brady. I paused for booze and I didn't hear any. Okay. All right. The NFL's GOAT, Patrick Mahomes. No booze still. Wow. Okay. All right. I'm impressed. Like, you're good people, better people than me. All right. Well, regardless of how you think about greatness, I know that when Jesus talked about greatness, it actually changed the paradigm entirely. That Jesus had some very unique words, some very powerful ideas about greatness that can change and mold your and my life if you let it. And if you're in this room and you're not like totally sure about this Jesus thing, you're not totally sure if you're all in or everything he said you believe, but maybe you have a person or an organization whose success you want to emulate, I want to challenge you that the movement of Jesus followers might be, actually, I think, empirically is the most successful, impactful movement of all time. If you think about it in size of impact, you can look and say, the Jesus followers in the United States give away more money to other countries than the largest government donors in the world. Impact, just in this sliver of followers of Jesus, is astronomical. Or maybe you want to say in terms of scope. We can look and we can say, okay, the U.S. federal government is the largest employer in the United States, from what I could find. Well, the people who say that they're following Jesus today, there are 1,000 Jesus followers for every member of our federal government. Just if you want to look in scope and breadth, the movement of Jesus followers is bigger and more impactful than I think any organization, movement, government, or business that you can name. And so maybe we give Jesus just a little bit of opportunity to speak into the way you and I think about greatness. We're going to spend our whole morning in one story. And that story is recorded by a man named Matthew. Matthew is a disciple of Jesus. A disciple is a fancy word for a student. And Matthew's one of 12 people who have been following Jesus likely for a couple years at this point. And he's seen some stuff. He's seen the way that Jesus talks about humility, service, kindness, and love. He's seen Jesus go and change people's lives, sometimes with a word, sometimes with a touch. He's seen people, he can't even explain it, people who were lame, they couldn't walk, and Jesus touched them, and they stood up and began to walk again. He'd seen things, and he's starting to realize, along with these other disciples, they are on the ground floor of something big. Jesus has this huge crowd that's beginning to follow him and show up at different places, and these 12 disciples, they look at each other and they say, we invested in round A of Uber's draft. Like, we are in. Like, this is going to be big. And so they've heard the humility. They've heard the service. They've heard all of the things. And then here is what happened on the road. They're traveling by foot, and they have this discussion. They came to Capernaum. When he was in the house, that means Jesus asked them, what were you all arguing about on the road? Who here has kids who have argued on the road? Yeah, most of us. But they kept quiet because on the way, they had argued about who was the greatest. And if you have kids, you've heard this argument. It's your 6-year-old turning to your 11-year-old saying, oh, no, I'm the best soccer player. I'm the best at Pokemon. And the 11-year-old turns around and is like, no, I am. And you're like, really? Like, that's it? Or maybe it sounds like this. You log into SportsCenter, and you look at, and there's some adult man who's up on the screen who's like, I am the greatest of all time. And it just leaves a sour taste in your mouth. You're like, I know it's part of the show, but we don't like it when somebody gets on and they just discount everyone else and say, I am the greatest. We see this consistently across our world today, and looking back at this story, I think we learn something simple but very true about humans for all of human history. And that simple fact is this: we all chase status. We all chase status. Now, I know some of us are like, oh, well, I know a lot of people do that, but not me. Look, it looks different for you, maybe then it looks different for me, and it looks different than the person sitting next to you. But we all chase status. For some of us, it's the likes and comments and follows on our socials. Whether you're on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok for however long that lasts, or Blue Sky, you're looking and you're seeing the followers, you're seeing the likes, and that is status that if that just went up and to the right, you would be so excited. You'd be over. Some of us chase status playing video games. Some of us chase status leading companies, leading teams, building a small business, building our homes, owning a home in Duval. All of us chase status. I want to tell you the story of the most extreme instance of this that I found that really hit me. I wonder if any of you know this person's face. Maybe when I say her name, it'll ring a bell. This is Anna Delvey. In 2013, she landed in New York City and walked out the picture of wealth. And she started dining with the elite, staying at luxury hotels. She talked about the Anna Delvey Foundation, this exclusive, members-only art foundation in her name. And she started gathering people to her like a magnet. Well, things started falling apart one day when she failed to pay back a friend money that he had spotted her on a vacation. That bill that she didn't pay was $68,000. She applied for a loan from a bank in New York, and it looked like all $22 million of the loan was going to fall through until it turned out none of it was real. She didn't have a way to put down collateral for this loan. She didn't have any money. She was the daughter of a Russian truck driver, and her name wasn't even Anna Delvey, it was Anna Sorokin. Well, everything started to fall apart. The bank's alleged fraud, the police came in, and then even in court, she shows up with designer clothes, making a spectacle of the whole thing. Years ago, this was national headlines for a little bit, and even though she was sentenced to prison, I think she got everything she wanted. I mean, let me say this. There is a TV show named after her, or not named after her, but after her, just like explaining what happened in her life. And there's a no-name pastor in Duval up here talking about her today. Anna chased status, and in that way, I think maybe succeeded. And isn't that, like if we're being really honest, maybe a little bit shallow? Like you and I chase status. Like if I can be really honest with you guys, if this is a safe space, I get very focused on titles. Really like getting a title change. It's fun. I chase status. You chase status too. It might look different. It might not be your job title. But you and I all have the same temptation that Anna does, to chase status, even when it's really shallow. Well, Jesus responds to his disciples having this argument about who is the greatest. And as he responds, he says something that is incredibly frustrating. Like, I don't like it. It doesn't feel satisfying to me. In fact, I struggle with this statement. Jesus turns to them and he says this. Sitting down, Jesus called the 12, his disciples, and he said, anyone who wants to be first must be the very last and the servant of all. And I don't know, like, what you would expect if you maybe hired a consultant to come help with your business. But if they walked in and they looked around and they were like, let me see your books. Okay, here's how you grow your business up and to the right. You need to make all the other businesses successful. Just go promote them. You'd be like, okay, fired. I'm going to get a new consultant. Or if somebody came in and you were like, hey, train me, coach me. How do I grow my social media? And they were like, here's what you got to do. Promote and grow everyone else's social media. I'd be like, all right. Like, it feels, I think, at least to me, maybe you feel this way too, it feels a little crazy. It feels a little bit nonsense. Like, does it even work? And I think for me, that's where the fear comes in. I'm like, okay, I could do this. I could go in. I could try to serve everyone. I could try to be kind to everyone. I could try to help everyone else succeed as much as possible. But what if it doesn't work? What if I try and I pour out and I give and I get passed over and I don't get that promotion, that move, that better house, that better... What if things start falling through? What if I give away money that I end up needing? What if it doesn't work? And today I want to pause for a second and just sit back and entertain the question, if you'd be open to it. Yeah, what if it doesn't work? But, what if it does? What if Jesus is right that this kind of love and service becomes a new measure for greatness that actually shows you a different path to greatness than you or I would be drawn to before? Let's be honest. Here in the U.S., the measure for greatness is things like a corner office and a reserved parking space and lots of people who work for you and serve you. Maybe you have cleaners in your house. Maybe you have your kids in a certain school. Maybe you are playing some game and you've hit a certain level on the leaderboard. We have specific measures for greatness, and none of them are grounded in service or love. What if it doesn't work? But what if it does? I want to tell you this. I don't know if you know, but we ask our volunteers, and every one of our staff members does this. We all try to park in some of the worst spots we can find around this building so that your friends, your neighbors, and your family can have the best spots that we can give them when it comes to walking in here. You might notice, or might not, that I'll never introduce myself as Pastor Jason, because I'm not up here to show off a title or have a certain status. I am just another person in this community who wants to serve and love our valley and Duval the very best I can. And yeah, I get a cool role. I love getting to be up here and speaking. I hope this is helpful and valuable for you as we go, but I am not here because of my own status. We are trying to be a church that serves this valley in a way that leaves a lasting impact. I would say we're trying to build a movement and an organization that has such an impact from end to end of 203 that it changes the way that our neighbors, our schools, our friends think about followers of Jesus, even if they don't want to step into this building. And the way that we get there is not by chasing status, but by serving other people. Jesus invites us to do the exact opposite of what our world says. Now, if this is already hard for you, which it is for me, if it's already frustrating for you, like it is for me, then if you sit back and listen to what Jesus has to say next, I think it might get a little bit worse. Jesus says this: He took a little child and he placed him among them. Taking the child in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me." And you might think, "Oh, Jesus is good with kids. That's so cute. Oh, that's adorable. A picture of innocence and purity." And let me just tell you, that's not the way it is. Like in Jesus' day, kids were not the picture of innocence. They were not romanticized. Kids were the picture of helplessness, the picture of somebody who could do nothing for you in return. There's a sad reason for that. Most of these kids don't make it to adulthood in Jesus' time. They don't have the setup and the infrastructure that we have now. And so kids, like this one Jesus had, are the picture of somebody who can do nothing for you in return. I love getting to go to different restaurants throughout Duval. I love eating local. I'm obsessed with it. Everything local. It's silly. It's to a silly extent with me. And I go and I sit down at the pub or the tavern here, and the waiter or waitress comes over, and I try to be so nice to them. And let's be honest, I know my motivation. If I'm really nice to them and they've got an extra dessert, they might come over and put it down there for free. I want to be nice to everyone. I want to be kind and serve people. But I think I know some of my motivations when it comes to serving people. And there are a lot of people who can give back to me. There's a lot of times I can hold the door for a boss who's going to choose whether I get a raise. I wonder if that's not the same for you. And Jesus wants to cut straight to the heart of it when he says, look at this little kid. He can do nothing for you. This is the person I want you to serve. Jesus says this, serve people who can give you nothing in return. Serve people who can give you nothing in return. Who is that for you? I can list a bunch of possibilities, but I wonder for you, who are the people in your house, on the street, at the store, in your job, who can do nothing in return, and you can be kind to them? Who is that for you? Now, if we're being really honest, we see companies like Uber that scale incredibly quickly, and we can say, all right, they do not have, by all accounts, a culture of mutual service, and yet they are very successful. Like in all of the terms of finances and growth, they are incredibly successful. And if I just come over here and I start just being kind to everyone, that feels like it doesn't have any teeth. Like what happens if I go into my middle school, I go into my high school, I go into my work, and I start being nice to people who don't deserve it? People who, maybe they're going to think that I'm a little bit soft. Like that's sometimes I think the fear that I have. I wonder if you have that fear. Like, is this even going to work? Or if it works, is it not going to work as fast? Like, am I not going to, I'm responsible for the growth of this organization, you might say. I'm responsible for the health of this team. Like, I might be shooting myself in the foot and making it grow slower. And I want to finish the story I told you earlier about Uber. Travis grew the company very, very quickly. Many of you know that regulations sometimes had to be put in place, sometimes just broke, sometimes got ignored in the process. The company scaled faster and faster and faster, and the more it did, the more allegations of all sorts of ethical problems, corporate governance issues, discrimination started to seep out, and more backlash started building up, some of it internally inside the company, some of it externally. And Travis gets to a point where he can't hold it back anymore. And he's ousted as the company's CEO from the company that he not only built and started, but had poured his life into to get it to a point where it is essentially a household name. And at this point, he's removed, no longer allowed to run the company. Now, Uber continues on. Uber continues growing, and they're doing fine. But Travis doesn't get to be a part of it. I wonder if whatever it is that you want to be great at, I wonder if you don't want it for a long time, not just a good time. Your marriage. I think we want that to last. Even if it gets hard sometimes, I think we want it to last. Your relationship with your kids, the company that you built or you invested in. Like, we can take time to go and just run it as fast as we can and have as many people serve us and feed into us as possible. But I believe that if you choose to create a culture and an attitude of mutual service, where you are kind to people who cannot be kind to you, where you help and support and promote people who cannot support or promote you, that it will begin to change the culture of your team, your family, your organization, and create longevity that you or I might miss otherwise. A friend of mine said this week, and it shook my world. The things that you and I respect in another person are so rarely the things that you and I aspire to. Isn't that true? Who are the people that you look up to? People who made an impact in you. Mentors, friends, family members. And what are the things that you aspire to? Is it that home in a specific city? Is it getting that new car? Is it getting that paycheck or that raise? Is it having a certain sized retirement fund? What are the things you aspire to? Are those really the things that made an impact in your life? When you connected with people who changed your direction, like your mentors, your friends, the people you cared about, the people you hang out with, do you hang out with them just because they're rich? Just because they own a home in Duval? just because whatever. No, the things that you and I aspire to are so rarely the same as the things that we respect in others. And so I think Jesus wants us to hear this. The path to greatness is through service. The path to greatness runs through service. So, if you want your work to last, if you want your marriage to last, you want your adult relationships with your kids to last, if you want to invest in a long time and not just a good time, I'd invite you to embrace this idea that the path to greatness runs through service. All right, Martin Luther King Jr. gave us an amazing quote on this subject that I'm sure you've heard, but I wanted to share here as well, and that is this: life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? So today, what I want to do is spend a couple of minutes talking through three places that you and I can start investing in serving other people. And serving can seem like this big thing. It can seem really complex. I actually think it's easier than you and I think. Here's the first area that you and I can begin to serve others. We can begin by serving our family. And I know, like, that seems maybe throwaway and really easy, but some of you have kids. And the other day, I took my kid, my 2-year-old, to Dairy Queen. He was with my 4-year-old. We needed something to do, and I was like, okay, I'm going to regret this, but I'm going to get him a little Blizzard, and he's going to love it. This is going to be so much fun. So my two kids were sharing this Blizzard, and it was cute, and they're going back and forth until Armageddon. When he got to the bottom of the cup and there wasn't any ice cream left, and I mean, it was the end of the world. He looks up at me, more? Well, I'm like, buddy, I'm not going to get you more. More ice cream? You see the tears running down. I'm like, what have I done? No, I am never buying you ice cream again. Like, you can have ice cream when you are 30. Like, that's where my heart goes. That's where my head goes. And I know if you have kids, you've been in a moment like that too. Honestly, if you're married, you've been in a moment like that too. If you are hoping to be married one day, you're going to have those moments not just with your future spouse, but even with your family now, your parents, your siblings. And all of us, I think, have a temptation to think a little bit like me and just say, all right, nope, that's it. New rule, no ice cream for kids. That's the way we're going forward now. And I know that sometimes it's more serious than that. Sometimes your family member said something to you and you're like, I'm not talking to them again. I know that sometimes they said something or implied something, you decided, there's a line, it's over, whatever it is, I'm not investing anymore. And I just wonder, yeah, maybe, but what if you did? Like, what if Jesus is right, and I believe he is? The path through greatness lies in service. Now, the second area that you can serve is this. You and I can learn to serve people at our work. And you're going to say, Jason, you're a pastor, you're on stage at a church. It's really easy for you to say. And maybe, but when I sit back and I think about like what it means to be a follower of Jesus at work, this quote came up in my study, and I cannot figure out who said it, but it is amazing and so true, and it's this: the work of being a Jesus follower is to be a Jesus follower at work. That means wherever you work. This is not about, like, sometimes I hear people and they're like, well, I go to work over here and I go to church and follow Jesus over here, and I don't really get to serve people here, but I'm going to volunteer. And let me tell you, the work of being a Jesus follower is to be a follower of Jesus at work, to show up with love and kindness and service and generosity, respect for people that you think, maybe rightly, maybe not, don't seem like they deserve that respect. The work of being a Jesus follower is to show up, whether that's towards your boss, who you think is not fair to you, or especially if you are the boss, you can serve a whole lot of people who maybe can't serve you in the same way you can. And for some of us, that's sitting back and saying, I'm going to serve our world through my work. I want to, I've got my little slice of this product, this software that we're putting out, and it is going to make someone's life better. And I'm just going to do my very best to serve my world by pouring my heart into this. And even if your day-to-day at work doesn't change that much, I wonder what this attitude might do for the way you approach your work. The path to greatness is through service. There's a third way that you can serve if you want to get a little bit more aggressive out here, and that is to serve locally and globally. I'm not even taking this moment to plug our amazing volunteer teams who are watching your kids downstairs right now, or who just came up from watching last service's kids. Shout out to you guys. But we send people to UGM, Union Gospel Mission, to serve homeless people in Seattle. I am leading a team to the Dominican Republic in April. We are sending a team to Mexico to build houses for people in August. You can serve locally and globally if you want to take a second, take a step, and get out of your comfort zone, maybe a little bit, and give back to people who maybe can't serve you at all in return. Why? Why? Because Jesus says that if you really want to be great, the path to greatness is through service. A couple years ago, I was at my second church job, and I was helping with some facilities and operations work. And one of the things that we did was we would host memorial services and celebrations of life for people. And we'd get these requests that came in, and they came in through one department, and they'd seep down into ours. And so we'd get this request, and I look down. Don't know the guy. Oftentimes in this case, I don't. Look at a little bit about his life. He's a manager. He was a manager at a grocery store, sad, passed away. Okay. This was a very normal request. All right, so I get my team together, we get working, we prep for it. And the thing we always do is we ask the family, how many people do you expect to have? That'll determine what room you're in. We had a 1,400-seat auditorium. Like, we don't want to put you in there if there's like 20 of you. We got a smaller room, and so we ask, and they're like, 500, 1,000? And I'm like, oh, like, I don't know how to break the news to you that that's probably not going to be the case. This is really sad. But we set up according to their request, and we put everything out, the flowers, the snacks and cookies and everything. We get ready for a beautiful service, and an hour ahead of time we're finished, and we're kind of twiddling our thumbs like, the family's here, but we got to wait until we see that the doors are opened, and there's people coming in an hour early. And this group comes in, and there's another group behind them, and this is not normal for memorial service, and so I kind of go over and I look out, and our parking lot started to fill up. And one by one, and then group by group, and family by family, people start filling this auditorium, and I go and I sit down in the back. Try to get out of the way, not distract anybody, and I look around. It was a huge auditorium. The seats were starting to fill up. I'm like, who is this guy? Like, what happened here? I grabbed the pamphlet they hand out, the bulletin. His name's on there, James. Operations manager at King Soopers. This man isn't the picture of greatness in the way that I thought about greatness. But I look around this huge room, and it is full from end to end of people who are not just crying and grieving, but celebrating. So I'm like, okay, I got to sit through this. What happened? And the service goes on, and more people come up, and they all tell the same story, that James, in his role from the time he was a bagger at King Soopers all the way up until when he was managing this little operations group for this one store, served every person who walked into that store, every person who he employed, everybody in his community started to know who this man was because he just served everyone. Gave away food to people who needed food, helped cover bills for people who couldn't pay for groceries, helped to make sure people got into better jobs than working for him when he knew that they could do more. He served everyone so well. And now, maybe a little bit like Anna, there's a no-name pastor in Duval talking about him. But the difference is, pretty soon, nobody's going to remember Anna Delvey. She's a fad, big, popular for a moment. But there were 1,000 people sitting in this auditorium crying for the loss of James, operations manager, King Soopers, Talon's Reach, Colorado. And man, I wonder if not just my impact, but our impact as a church could be like that. Like we could try in your life up and to the right, aggressive, Travis Kalanick mode. But what if as a church, we came together to serve people from end to end in the valley? What if we were the sort of place that this city couldn't live without? What if you were the sort of person whose impact outlasted you in a way like this? Friends, the path to greatness is through service. The way that we pursue power in this world is really broken. The way that we chase promotions, power, control, our way of doing things, it's not working. Like, let's take a second and take like the polarized lenses, the polarization out of our vision for just a second and look around at the way that our world works, at the way that our country works, at the way that our area, our city works, and the way that our companies work, and say, hey, some of the ways that we use and pursue power are really broken. They are not working. And I'm not trying to call anyone out, but I am wondering what it would take for you and I to embrace a radical idea, not a bolt-on idea that we should serve some more people and be a little bit nicer this week, but that we redefine greatness through a currency of love and service for every person, especially the ones who can't do anything for us. How would that change? Not just your life, your home. I care about those things. Maybe not just your company, but this geographical area. Friends, I want to be a part of a movement that changes the way that people think about church, that changes the way that people think about followers of Jesus. And I hope, I pray, and I'm inviting that maybe that starts here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pray for a few minutes, and I'm going to pause while I pray. And during that pause, I'm just going to ask that God would give you just clarity, that you would just have in your mind a name, a face, a person that Jesus wants you to serve. That we would start small, but we wouldn't stop there. And that as a community, we would serve this valley so well that it changes the way that people think about followers of Jesus. That's what I want.